Wiley, and this is my virtual library. As I reflect on my Google Library experience, I found it insightful since I was able to expand my knowledge on the 8 genres with the 3 different books that we were supposed to incorporate into this activity. So I will be starting with contemporary realistic fiction. The books I chose were Junie B. Jones' First Grade Cheater Pants. Then I chose Diary of a Wimpy Kid, as well as Holes. So I did like Junie B. Jones' First Grade Cheater Pants the most, partly because this was one of the books that I did read a lot when I was younger. But this book does address difficult temptations young children experience during test taking, either due to lack of preparation or test taking can be difficult for many. And it focuses on the consequences that may happen if you do take the risk of cheating and get caught. Although I did not dislike any of the stories I did choose, I was less favorable for the book Holes. Although the movie is amazing, the book also does address a lot of the topics in the movie, which is part of why I found it difficult to read, because although this text is written very well, the main character does get sent to a juvenile detention camp where the owners of this camp were trying to look for a hidden treasure that was not there. And so they treated the boys poorly, gave them minimal water, food, etc., just in order for them to dig these holes for them. So the story that I would focus on if I was to incorporate into a classroom setting is Junie B. Jones' First Grade Cheater Pants, once again because it does focus on the difficult concept of cheating, and it shows students the risks that they are taking due to this opportunity and how it can cause trouble. So next I will be addressing fantasy. So the books that I chose was Charlie and the Chocolate Factory by Roald Dahl, Matilda by Roald Dahl, and Charlotte Webb by E.B. White. And so the book I enjoyed the most was Matilda, and this is just because Matilda's family does not pay as much attention to her, and although she goes through many difficult experiences throughout the story, she's a very smart girl and works very hard, as you see throughout the book. And then we learn about how through these difficult times she's able to use the stress and her knowledge to almost have like a telepathical power, which I found quite interesting. The book I did not enjoy as much as Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, although I love the overall story. I do feel like it is kind of more well known, and I believe I would rather incorporate Matilda into a lesson just because this story is less heard of. But I would incorporate all 3 books into a classroom setting just because I feel like these are staples in individuals' childhood, and these stories are very engaging for young readers. The next section I will be addressing is the historical fiction aspect. So the books I chose was The Diary of a Young Girl, Anne Frank, I Survived Hurricane Katrina by Lauren Tarshish, and Island of the Blue Dolphin by Scott Odell. So the book I favored the most was Island of the Blue Dolphin, just because it does give a personal perspective on the way that the Indians did survive, hunt, and live their daily life. Although I did not dislike any of the other books, I would use them all to teach about different historical lessons. I just feel like Island of the Blue Dolphin is a better option because there's not a lot of information about this aspect other than historical textbooks, which are less engaging to students. The next section I will be addressing is informational biography. So I chose The Story of Simone Biles, which I found very fascinating because when I was younger I used to do gymnastics, and I feel like she's very well known throughout the athletic community. Then Ruby Bridges, of course, she's a staple for the Civil War. And then who was Walt Disney. So the book that I found my favorite was Who Was Walt Disney? And this is solely because I like how Whitney Stewart writes her books, and just the animations and stuff, or the illustrations, for the different books that she writes. I did also enjoy, of course, the story of books, but like I said, I would lean towards the Who Was books, just because there's more options of them, teaching biographies, because these books have existed since I was a student, and unfortunately, there's not many books of the story ofs quite yet, just because these are newer, um, forms of literature, but they are very well written. So, on to literature representing diversity. Um, I picked Where Are You From by Yamil Said Mendez, which is a great book teaching about a historical culture of a Hispanic young lady and her abuelo. And then Hair Love is just teaching about confidence. And then All Are Welcome. And so the story that I will be focusing on is All Are Welcome. This story talks about a school community and what they do throughout the day, to be inclusive to all in their community. I think this is a great, amazing book, by Alexandra. I did not dislike any of these books. I think they're great ways to teach inclusivity and the importance of self love and, just your community in general. So the book that I would use to teach my future students specifically is All Are Welcome. And this is just solely due to the fact that this story addresses all cultures, as well as teaching, different significance and importance of cultures, that each individual experience, because there is part of a book where it talks about different parts of the cultures. And then onto the poetry, I chose Revolting Rhymes by Roald Dahl, Fox and Socks, and then The Giving Tree. So, the book I enjoyed the most is, of course, The Giving Tree. I think the backstory behind it is so beautiful, teaching, students how to care for one another is a great book. I didn't like the Roald Dahl book. It does address all the classic fairy tales that we were taught as we were younger, but it has a mischievous twist, which isn't bad, but I don't think that it would be, um, as well to use in a teaching setting. Um, I also kind of don't like the name of the story, and the front animations are not as, I guess, engaging. But I would use The Giving Tree in a teaching aspect because it is a cute story, and it also teaches how to give and care for others. But it also shows the effect of if you give too much, the repercussions beyond that. So, onto the science fiction. The stories I chose is The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. There are 3 stories of this, but this is just the first one. Then I chose Never Let Me Go by Kuzo Ishiguro. And then the last story I chose is Fahrenheit 451. And, the book I enjoyed the most was Fahrenheit 451. And this is just due to the fact that it really makes you, consider the effect of censorship and how it can truly have an effect on society if you don't stand up for what is right. You see the consequences, behind both aspects, right? Because you lose the fact of knowledge is power, um, since you are burning down the books, which is a form of censorship. I did not enjoy Never Let Me Go as much, just due to the fact that I think it's kind of scary that this story is talking about cloning individuals. It's not a bad story. I just, would lean away from that one. And the story that I would specifically incorporate into a lesson with my students is, once again, Fahrenheit 451, because it does teach the importance of using your voice and not allowing anyone to censor the way you think or believe, because then you are conforming into societal beliefs and you lose your individuality. And then the last part that I will be focusing on is traditional literature or folktale. So I chose Little Red Riding Hood, The Three Little Pigs. I don't know why it says wolves. and then the story of the three little pigs. So for this one, the book I enjoyed the most is The True Story of the Three Little Pigs. I love this story because it is something that builds beyond the Three Little Pigs. So I feel like everyone's heard the Three Little Pigs story, and it is kind of interesting because this is now your point of view on this story. And so I really enjoyed that. And then the one that I didn't like as much as Little Red Riding Hood, just because it kind of doesn't go with the two themes that I am addressing. But if I was to choose out of these books, the ones that I would specifically focus on in a lesson is The Three Little Pigs and then The True Story of the Three Little Pigs, just because these two can be built off of in a lesson. And you could also have students decide once you finish reading the two stories which side they believe is true. Do you think that the wolf blew down the house, or do you think that it was an accident? And then you can build a lesson based off of that, have students write about it, draw pictures, etc. So this is my library.